Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here with a video from My Favorite Things. In today's video, I'm going to be recreating this card that design team member Keeway created using the new December 2016 release. So to start off, we're going to be using the new Wavy coloring book background stamp. This is a super fun background that has this great pattern on the front. It kind of goes with the trend of the coloring book thing that's happening right now. There's a lot of great coloring books out there on the market, and this stamp set is a great way to kind of create that same image just by having a stamp and being able to recreate it over and over. So I really love the design on this stamp. Now the stamp is large enough that you can stamp it either vertically or horizontally, so it just depends on which direction you want to stamp it. With a pattern like this, it doesn't really matter a whole lot because it's going to look, very similar regardless of whether you stamp it horizontally or vertically. So to start off for the card we're making today, I've taken Cornflower Premium Dye Ink, and I'm just completely covering the whole area of this stamp. Now we are going to be using Copic markers, and I just want to mention before we get started that normally with a Copic marker coloring, I would not use dye ink. Dye ink tends to bleed and kind of makes the color run when you combine it with Copic markers. I would normally use hybrid ink, which you can definitely do in the cornflower. I did not have cornflower hybrid ink, and I did talk to Keeway, and she mentioned that she didn't use hybrid either. She actually used the dye ink. So I decided I'm going to give it a go, see what happens, and because there's so much blue detail in the design, even if the marker ran a tiny bit, it wouldn't be super noticeable. So I just went ahead and used the premium dye ink. But I just wanted to mention that you may find that this ink will bleed with Copic, so it's definitely more recommended to try the hybrid ink. So now that we've kind of got through that, let's go ahead and start to color the image. So I have the image stamped on the white cardstock panel, and I have a few different shades of blue Copic markers. And the idea here is just to kind of pick different areas and color them in with the Copic markers. You can color in as much or as little as you want of the design. The main thing is to keep everything very blue based, so we're not adding any additional color. We're leaving just the white and then the blue detail. So I have a very light blue color here that I'm using first. And I like to kind of go around the whole entire image and do all of the areas I want to do with the lightest color first. And then I like to move on to my next color and do all those areas, and then the third color and do all of those areas. I just find it's a lot quicker for the coloring process to kind of do all of the same color at once before moving on to the next one. Now with my lightest color, it is super light, so picking up on screen, it actually looks almost white. It's not as super noticeable. This color here is definitely a little bit darker, so you can see where I'm coloring a little bit more. And I'm just kind of going through and coloring different areas and trying not to have a lot of the same colors touching the same area. And for my card here, I decided to keep it a little bit more white. I did not put as much color into the background as Keeway did, just to show a different variation, that you can add as much or as little color as you want. It just pretty much depends on the look that you're going for. So if you look at Keeway's card, you can see that she has a lot of blue detail in her background. And then if you compare it to the one that I'm going to end up with when I'm done here, I have a lot more white detail. I stayed with really light blues, and then I left a lot of the areas white as well. So it's just personal preference, whatever you prefer. But I just, like I said, wanted to show that there's different ways that you can do it, and it's completely up to you whatever way you decide to color the image in. So I'm going to end it here. I have my background finished. I'm happy with how much detail of the blue I have, and I'm just going to do one more step here before we start to assemble the card. So I've taken some Copic white paint here, and I'm just going to, I added it to an acrylic block, and I'm just going to add some water on there. I'm just going to spritz it right onto the acrylic block, and that's just going to water it down a bit so that I'm able to kind of move that paint around a little bit easier. And I've added the panel into my splatter box, which is just an MFT box that I decided to keep and reuse, and it works perfect. So if you need a little area to be able to do splatter detail, these boxes work great. And what I'm doing is I'm just taking the paintbrush and I'm kind of flicking it off the side of the acrylic block over the background. And that's just dropping little splotches of white ink all over the background. And it just gives it a really fun bit of detail that you wouldn't otherwise get if you didn't add this little step. So now that we have the background finished, it's time to add a sentiment onto the panel. So what I'm going to do is combine both stamping and die cutting. So I first cut out the word kindness from the panel using the new Kind and Kindness die-namics die set that's part of the December release. And I kind of kept it up towards the top area of the panel. And now I'm just adding some adhesive to the back of this, and I'm adhering it directly to my white top folding card base. And this is going to completely cover that whole card front and be the entire front of the card. Now I have the kindness word there, but we want to add a little bit more of a sentiment. So we're going to add a pop of color, and we're going to use a strip of Coral Crush cardstock, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment directly onto this strip. So I'm going to be using A Little Kindness Goes a Long Way, and I'm stamping it onto the strip with Versamark ink. Once I have it stamped on there, I'm just going to add some embossing powder. This is white embossing powder, and I'm going to completely cover that sentiment, and then I'm going to heat it with my heat tool. And this is just going to give us a great pop of white against this coral piece here, and then we can use this directly on the card for the rest of our sentiment. So I'm going to use my scissors and trim the ends off of this little piece here since it is a little bit too long. And then I'm going to add a thin strip of foam adhesive to the back of this strip, and then I'm going to adhere it directly to the card front, right underneath the kindness word that we die cut from the panel. And then that's going to give us this really fun, cool background that has all this blue detail and this great design. And then it's going to give us the pop of color on this coral piece with the sentiment heat embossed right on there. So it just looks really fun. And then to finish it off, just for a little bit of dimension, we're going to add a few clear sequins just kind of scattered above and below the sentiment, and then that's going to complete our card today. So thank you so much to Keeway for creating this card for us to recreate in today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.